So I just watched Other Visits Part 2, and the Vok seriously need to improve their firewall. Their stuff keeps getting hacked. Also known as the episode where Megatron accidentally reveals the Grand Maul one series too early. Megatron has control of the alien device, and he has plans for it as well that the Maximals have to unravel, all the while being on the back foot for most of the episode despite having the numbers advantage for a good chunk of it. Of course, that's what happens when Megatron gets his hands on an alien death weapon, which just seems to be what happens. They send down a death weapon, the Predacons manage to take it over, the Maximals have to blow it up. That's just how it goes. It's a little more complex this time, though, which makes it a little bit more interesting than the Brigadoon, which is the floating island's name. So, for starters, we find out a little bit more about the transmetals and the fusors here, and how heavily they were affected by the quantum surge. It wasn't just like the quantum surge itself, it was just the sheer power of the Vok's planet buster and the detonation combined with the quantum energy that created the transmetals and inversely created the fusors. It is pointed out a few places that fusors do seem to have a small amount of transmetal tech to their robot modes. Not a whole lot, but enough to notice. You know, they're noticeably a little bit shinier, a little bit more advanced looking than the previous figures, which is most likely because the models are a lot newer than, you know, Rhinox and Dinobot and all that. But it does mean they're a little bit more Vok than we originally realized. And like half the cast is basically, you know, Vokanized? I don't know how to phrase that one. Tarantulas points it out later in the episode where they are now one with the aliens, which he's surprisingly cool with, given what we learned about him last episode. But it does mean that these alien devices actually do allow them in because they register a lot more Vok than they should. You know, they are part of the same technology now. Kind of interesting. Let's see. I'm reading through. There's a lot going on here. So this is where we finally learn what the alien disc is for. Like the alien golden disc, the one that was found on Earth. It's basically a control key. It gives them access to this base and allows them to activate it for their own uses. Megatron, of course, taking it for himself and gaining its power. Interesting to note, when he puts the disc in its slot, it actually, like, the ship creates, or like the ship sends down a control chair for him, which is perfectly sized to him, which is weird that it even is programmed for that, given the fact the Vok have no bodies, but apparently need chairs. I'm going to assume that when he activated it, there's like this green energy that kind of envelops him. I'm assuming that is scanning his form and actually creating a control chair that is suited for him. That's about the only bit of logic I can define there. Makes sense to me, anyway. So, one of the plots to this episode is just what Megatron is doing with Tarantulas. Tarantulas is fascinating in this episode because he made it clear in the first part that he's no longer under Predacon command. He is no longer in a part of a Maximal. Or I'm confusing all my words today. I'm tired. No, he makes it very clear to Megatron he's no longer part of his command. So in this episode, he is very much playing to that. When his alliance with Megatron ends, you know, as soon as Megatron no longer needs him, he immediately corners Rat Trap and gets him to take him to the Maximal base, where it seems like they repair him before holding all their weapons to him, because all the burns and everything that he took from being attacked by Megatron's big floating head is gone. I don't know if that's an animation error or if they're just being super nice before they start negotiating. But yeah, Tarantulas comes to the Maximal base peacefully to use their scanners and figure out where the ship is and what Megatron is up to. And turns out he wanted transwarp cells. He wants this thing to fly to Cybertron. It is pointed out that when Megatron first gains control of this and gets all of his Predacons on board, they don't immediately leave. And they don't immediately go to attack the Maximal base. Megatron, for some reason, wants them, or at least is completely fine with allowing them to gain all of their defenses, with allowing them to, like, build themselves up and prepare themselves. And they never really touch on why. If Megatron is planning to fly this thing to Cybertron, he doesn't really need that in any way, shape, or form. Like, there really isn't a point to, like, sparing the Maximals. If they had gone to attack the base first, the episode would have been over, you know, and even though they mention that, Tarantulas makes a point of it, in fact. You know, Megatron wants you alive. I want to know why. But we never really figure out why. We figure out that he's taking transwarp cells to the ship. We don't know why he wanted the Maximals alive, because they just got in the way. It's annoying. It's a very glaring plot hole in this episode, where you would think his first goal would be to wipe the Maximals out so he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't do that. And they point it out, they lampshade it, and then they still don't do anything with it, and it's frustrating. Elements of this episode I do like is that we see Primal and Rat Trap teaming up again, which is the first time the two have been like duo with each other since God, it's been a long time since Power Surge, I think. But it's such a drastic change from how the relationship was then, because now Rat Trap is all about, you know, helping out Primal and getting into the fight. Very cool to see. Also, it comes down to Rat Trap and Tarantulas again, with the two I was gonna say palling around, but definitely not pals. They were forced to cooperate for a while, which I do like, given their past with each other. You know, it just, more often than not, I just noticed when those two share screen time, and just see it just seems to happen a little bit more commonly than the others. You know, outside of, like, obviously Megatron and Optimus. We have a few interesting mentions, like the Predacon Alliance is mentioned, and we kind of get it implied that Megatron is an outlier because he is undertaking actions to convince them that conquest is what they should be seeking. So he's actually kind of playing to the Predacons' true leaders. We kind of figure out, yes, that he's not the guy in charge. He is a rogue. He is an outlier, which is interesting. We also kind of get a little hint about his real goals in this one, which he does rant about to Primal, and includes, like, he's talking about taking over Cybertron, destroying the Maximals, and the Autobots too. Which seems a little bit nuts, because you don't really know what he's up to yet. We do. We know why the Autobots got thrown into that conversation. See. There's a couple, just to point out, we're getting into this phase where, because there's no Energon surges anymore, they transform into beast modes arbitrarily. And it's very true in this one, where Primal just, like, hangs out in beast mode for a while just because. And it gets more noticeable as the show goes on. He'll do it again in season 3, because he literally has no reason to use anything but his jet mode. So that's what he transforms into 90% of the time. We'll see his ape mode like twice. And neither time is necessary. And let's see. And yeah, the last thing would be the last fight in the episode, which I thought was actually really fun. With Rat Trap is trying to figure out how to shut down the ship. Tarantulas is setting off the transwarp cells and rigging them to blow, in very, like, espionage style. We're getting a mid-air battle between Primal and Megatron in beast mode. And again, I like beast mode fights. You know, where they are a lot more physical. They're not relying on just standing back and shooting at each other. It was fun to see, especially like it's so chaotic in midair watching them tangle around. And like Megatron actually comes up on the winning side of it. You know, he loses mostly because he had three trying to take him down at the same time in 3 different directions. So eventually he's just going to fail. The episode does end on that little bitter note. Once again, like the aliens have left and all of the Maximals who survived the incident are gathered around and looking up at the sky. It's a scene that we've seen multiple times, and Air-Razor and Tigatron are not part of it. The 2-parter ends without any resolution to what happened to them, and we aren't going to get one until very late into next season, which is an interesting bitter note to end the episode on. There's a feeling of, you know, we won the day, but we still lost, which it's an interesting tale. It's an enjoyable set of episodes. Overall, I do have issue with that plot, with the plot hole of Megatron holding off an attack on the Maximals, but beyond that, everything else is really solid. There's a lot of parts working around, and we got a lot of insight to some of the really good characters in the show. So, all around, yeah, worth a watch. That is going to do it for this 2-parter. Next up, very cool episode to talk about. Very different tone for the series. I'm looking forward to that. Stay tuned. It's coming up soon. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.